Hello folks, happy weekend. I hope everything's going well. You're getting a extra video this week, which is, cool because I don't normally get time to do things like this. And I've been getting a few emails recently on the Revenant game that I released, the RPG that I released, and a lot of people have been reading it and saying, how did you write it in such a quick time? What is your process like? And when I get like 5 or more emails on the same topic, I think it's pertinent to do a video on it as quickly as I can, because it means that a few people are needing answers, right? And it saves me typing out an email 5 times, or copy and pasting, because I always feel a bit bad when I need to do that with people. I do it enough in work, do you know what I mean? You get the same question 5 times from 5 different people. But anyway, you guys are worth more to me than that, so let's get into it and do a little video, shall we? Nice and chill, on a weekend, and not scripted, just me talking through my process and just what is going on and how you can go about writing your own tabletop role-playing game. It is an incredibly rewarding experience, and you start to look at companies like Games Workshop, Talsorian Games, or the people like that in a different light. You see them as fellow game designers rather than, these mystical people who know how to write games when you don't. It's not as difficult as you think. It just takes practice. But if you have the passion to do it, maybe this series, maybe 1 to 3 videos, maybe, definitely 2, will help you in writing your own tabletop RPG. First, credentials, I suppose. Teacher shows his work, sort of a thing. Here is the Revenant RPG. Right here, you can go get it on Amazon. This is the Kindle edition, but there is also a paperback edition. I'm not clicking on that because it shows my address, which isn't good, and I don't know how to take it off. But anyway, there's a paperback edition and a Kindle edition. It's selling quite well right now. I'm making some good pocket money from it, which is great. If you do buy it and do like it, please leave me a rating, because it does help out. The amount of sales I've got towards ratings is, like, ridiculous. So, whenever I speak to people on Amazon who've released books, they always say, like, getting money is great. And remember this, guys, getting money is great from your book on Amazon. Make sure people come back and rate it, because if you don't get at least 2 ratings, nobody's going to see your book on Amazon. We got the 3 here, which is great, but we do want more. We want more ratings. So if you do like it, I get lots of emails saying it's great. I get lots of messages saying it's great. And I always say, leave a review. Leave a review. Go back and leave a review. So if you do get one of my books, or if you do a book of your own, make sure you tell people to leave a review for you, because it does help you out over there. Right, jumping into the new game that we're writing over here, just so I can show you my work there. I have got a piece of work out there, so it's not just pie in the sky talk, it's all there for you, and you can go and get it yourself to prove what I'm saying, sort of a thing. But here is the RPG that I'm writing right now, and I actually think, in terms of what we're going to be talking about today, I'm going to cover the most important part of your RPG right up front when you start writing it, okay? The most important part of your RPG is not the lore. It's not even the rules, in my opinion. The most important part of your RPG, in my opinion, is the introduction. The start, yeah? It is what you put right up front and center to let people know what kind of a game you're selling to them. The ideal introduction will be able to give people a sense of the world, a sense of the rules, and what kind of game they have in their hands in the first couple of pages. That doesn't mean your introduction needs to be just a couple of pages. Mine certainly isn't, right? Mine is, how many pages are we at? I don't know. Quite a lot, though, because you can see right now our piece of work here is sitting on 51,000 words, and I'm about halfway through the game right now. But the introduction goes, let's add in insert and page numbers. Where are we? Page numbers. There we go. So we are on, our introduction goes for 14 pages, double spaced on A4. This means you'll be getting about 20 to 25 pages in a normal sized book. It'll be around that size. And we cover pretty much everything in here. And in the full introductionary lore and everything like that goes on to about page 28, 29, which is about 50 pages in a normal book. So that's the thing. Normally people are pretty taken aback by the juxtaposition. They say, well, how come your introduction is 50 pages? Isn't that too much? No. As long as you get the message in the first couple of pages about what your game is. It's very, very, very simple. Another thing people say, and I will go into how to do that in a minute, by the way. I'm not going to leave you high and dry. Another thing that people say to me is, in general, when I talk about this kind of thing, is that's all well and good, you know, having like a small introduction. But how do I get them in? How do you design it? How do you put it out there? Well, your first bit of an introduction, as in this very first page that you do, I've got a bit of lore text here, a little blurb, but that's it. This should be you, the entire first 20 pages, right, this bit here, till we get down to like page 14, right? This entire first 15 to 20 pages should not be taught or shown in a lore perspective, right? You shouldn't be writing prose at this stage. You should be writing as you, talking directly to your audience. Okay? Literally. We have a welcome to Oathbound section here, and I'm going to read it out verbatim. Your first piece of writing in your game should say something like this, and then we'll cover what it says in context when I've read it out, okay? Okay. Welcome to Oathbound. When they pick up my new book, this is the first thing they're going to see. Oathbound is a tabletop role-playing game based in the extensive setting world of Grail and on the more focused continent of Canaan. Grail is a dark world living in the midst of a near-constant age of winter. Even Canaan, the most hospitable region within the world, is rather autumnal and filled with blood-red forests and oceans of bamboo that clatter in the near-frigid wind. Grail has been battered constantly by dragonfire, warped and broken time and again by the great wars designed to buy mankind another day of survival. Only in recent years have such apocalyptic wars ebbed away into legend and history as the kings of our world attempt to build a new legacy from the ashes of what came before. It is into this world that you and your band will step. Oathbound is a game that is about keeping oaths to those around you. It is a game about friendship and brotherhood in a world that is extremely hostile and apt to try and break you whenever it can. It is a role-playing game about groups of strugglers attempting to fight to keep their destinies their own, and to stand back to back in the sword press, so that the world may never overtake them. You will lead armies great and small, you will bind your sword brethren together, you will forge out on missions for coin as well as survival. You are not a merry band of adventurers seeking activities of daring do. This world will devour fools. Instead, you are a group of grizzled and tarnished men and women, dedicated to staying alive and ensuring your band of warriors survives and thrives in a world that wants you dead. Oathbound is a game grounded... Sorry, I misread that. You know what? If you've ever gotten into hobby nightmares and go, why is he so bad at reading? Now you know. Even reading my own writing doesn't go well. Anyway, Oathbound is a grounded game based in logic. It is completely possible to die of infected wounds and dysentery in our game. If it can happen to Edward the Black Prince, it can happen to you. With that being said, Oathbound is also a game about telling a story about a desperate struggle to survive. I hope to balance these two design concepts to generate a game that you will hold dear and moments that you will remember forever. Alright, so that is literally the first thing you read. And what kind of information do you glean from that? Well, you glean, in this first paragraph, a bit about the world, right? What kind of a world have you just picked up in your hands? What are you getting into here? You've dipped your toe in. What are you seeing? How does it feel? What does it look like? What kind of concepts are there? Then, we have a paragraph on what's the game like? How does it play? What are the key messages that are meant to be brought out of playing the game? What is the experience of playing the game like? And then our final paragraph is basically a premise. It's a challenge to myself of what I'm trying to do in building this game. The really cool thing about the introduction is you can write it guilt-free right now. You can literally write it guilt-free right now because it is a premise for you. It is an invocation of the muse for you. You are literally all the way through the rest of the writing of this massive tome. Look at all this, right? All the way through all of this writing, I always come back to these 3 paragraphs. Always. I always check back to know, am I getting it down? Am I staying on point? Is this rule that I'm writing geared into these 3 paragraphs? Is this piece of lore that I'm thinking about geared into these 3 paragraphs in a coherent tone and a measured way, right? This is the most important part of your game. These 3 paragraphs. But that does, and again, that doesn't mean this is all you do, but this is the most important part. This is a 1 page of A4, double spaced. If I take the double spaces out, this is like half a page of A4, 3 paragraphs. But in these 3 paragraphs, you now know what kind of a game Oathbound is, what kind of a world it is, what kind of a game designer I am, and what I'm trying to do with my game. And finally, you're able to draw the conclusion as somebody buying this book, whether this book is for you or not. That's why it's so important. Get this bit right. It's not so much about making sure it's quality content, it's about making sure your message is coming across. Okay? So let's move on from there. What else do we do when we're moving in to Oathbound and moving into our game? Well, the very next section is, what am I getting myself into, right? And this is literally me explaining how a game, a session of Oathbound plays, right? And we go a bit more in depth into the kind of characters and factions you'll come across in the world. Again, this is very, very much a writer talking to his audience. There's no mystery here, right? I literally tell you in this section what certain cultures are based on. The Kania of Canaan are based on feudal Japan, for instance. The folk here are based on Northern European and Nordic peoples. And I tell you that straight up. I tell you that they're not really an allegory for those people, but they are inspired by those people as we go along, right? I don't just give you the lore and expect you to do it yourself. The worst games I pick up, or even really good games sometimes, make this mistake. They put lore right up front, or even worse, they put rules right up front. Unless you're making a micro RPG, don't do that. Don't do that. If you want your book to sell, make sure the first couple of pages are not filled with complicated lore, and they're not filled with a dump of rules straight away. That's not what the start of your book's there for. Take your time. Explain what you're doing. RPGs are a complicated beast, and you need to be able to explain to your audience just what they're getting themselves into. And sometimes it's best to do it in black and white, like literally this. What am I getting myself into? Literally, that is what the reader is asking themselves at the start of your book. Well, I've explained it. I explain, again, I reiterate what I've already said, and I explain it further, you know? It's all about steps. It's about being in a yes ladder. Do you know what a yes ladder is, right? It's when you ask somebody a lot of questions to which they can say yes, and then you hit them with a more difficult question later on that you really want them to say yes to. They're much more likely to say yes to that question if they've already responded to you in the positive 5 or 6 times. You know? So if I've got something that I really want from somebody, I don't do this, by the way, but it does work. If I've got something that I really want from somebody, I will ask, you can ask them 5 to 6 questions through a conversation that they go, oh yeah, sure. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah, oh yeah. And then you ask them that question that they may say no to originally, but because they've established a positive rapport with you, they go, oh yeah, okay. Right? And they give you what you want, right? That's what this is. This is me. This is the welcome to Oathbound part is very boilerplate. It's out there. It's very simple to read, right? Once you've bought in, if somebody's picked up my book and gone, wow, I like this. Okay, this sounds cool. They bought in a little bit. Now, we take what I just said there, and we expand on it a little bit in the what am I getting into section, right? It's a little bit longer. And if they're still there going, oh, I really like this, then I take the hood back and go, right, design of Oathbound. This is how the game is designed. Literally. In mini essay format. This is how the game is designed. I literally tell you exactly how the game is, where its inspirations come from, and at the end of this part here, when you're down at like page 6 or 7, you now pretty much know whether this game is for you or not. Okay? If you don't know by now, I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell you, but you should know by the end of this page whether this game is for you and whether you're buying it or not. And if I've done my job properly, if you're a role player who likes grim, dark settings, it's already in your bag to be bought, right? Or stolen if you're from Liverpool. No, sorry, I'm just kidding. Anyway, touchstones of Oathbound. Right, this is another really important part. So once I've laid out my thesis here, right at the start of my work, the next part of the introduction is touchstones of Oathbound. So this is basically a really fun part where you tell people what inspired your world. There is nothing new under the sun. Never be ashamed of being inspired by something, because you know what that's going to do? It gives people a window, again, more hooks. You're giving the reader hooks to latch onto. You want your book, you want your setting, you want your game to have as many access points as possible so a person reading it can go, ooh, I like that. And they're in. The reason why, do you know why Warhammer 40,000 works so well? It has access points. Thousands and thousands of access points where people from different myriad places in life and on the earth and in cultures can latch on to different parts of Warhammer 40,000 and still get into the same hobby. That's what we're doing with our introduction. And Touchstones basically tells people, hey, if you like one of these things, then you'll like my game. And these things are also, you need to tell them, if you want to get in the mood to play my game, consume one of these things. And these are things like books and manga. Things like Berserk, the First Law Trilogy, The Lies of Locke Lamora, The Lord of the Rings, Shogun, Vagabond, the manga, right? Again, you're casting a wide net. Make sure there's not like 50 things here, right? But maybe 10 to 20 things that have inspired you to make the game that you're making. We've got video games here like Ghost of Tsushima, Elder Scrolls Skyrim, Mountain Blade, The Witcher 3, God of War, Dragon Age Origins, Onimusha, Shogun 2 Total War, right? All of those things blended together should give you something like Oathbound. Quite rightly so as well. And you've got movies and television, of course, because movies and television are awesome, and you should be going into these things and, you know, having some fun with them. So people should be able to look at these at a glance and go, ooh, I like the kind of world he's describing here, because people are really, really good at melding these things together in their minds. Very good at it, right? Especially if they've experienced one or two of these things before. Like, if you've read Berserk and you've read Vagabond, you'd be like, ooh, combine those, that's cool. With a bit of Lord of the Rings, oh, yes, please, I'm going to buy this book, right? That's what this part is here for. It's also a little cool bit for you, where you get to self-examine yourself and go, well, hang on a minute, you know, what has inspired me to make this game? And it's a nice journey to go on, to make sure that this is a part of your game too, in your introduction. Right. One other thing you need to do, and this isn't for all games, but I've done parts of this introduction where I talk about a distaste for allegory later on, right? And this is extremely important to me. This is later on in the introduction. A distaste for allegory. This is basically where I tell you, look, there are cultures and people in this world who are inspired by ones in the real world. I'm a historian, that's what I do, right? That's my bread and butter. But that doesn't mean the people in this world are a straight allegory for people in the real world. That's not how this works. Just because the Kania look like they're from feudal Japan, and they may talk like they're from feudal Japan, and fight like they're from feudal Japan, that doesn't mean they're from feudal Japan. These are not Japanese people transplanted into my game. Why? Because I'm not Japanese, I didn't live in that time period, I just think that their armor and weaponry is cool, and that samurai and the Bushido code is also really cool. That's why it's in the game, right? It's under different names, it's changed and things like that, but it's in the game because I find it inspiring to write about. It's very, very, very important. The one thing that I always do when I'm writing these games, I always get to around 30,000 words in. And there's a reason why Revenant is the first one that I finished when I worked it out. And that's because Revenant is very unique. It's very weird. And so I didn't think, wow, am I ripping somebody else off? Like, am I, like, just using real-world things to fill in the blanks of my narrative? Wow, how lame. No. Because I never had a section like this, where I laid it out. Your introduction should remove the shackles from you as a writer, where you now know the boundaries of your own sandpit. You literally are sitting in your sandpit and you know the boundaries. You know what you can and can't use, and you know the rules by which you're using those boundaries. You're using those tools to make your sandpit. The introduction should be you showing your tools to the reader and saying, look, I don't like allegory, and I have a big distaste for allegory, and so it's right there in the book. If somebody ever says to me, wow, the Kania are just like feudal Japanese people, I go, no they're not. I literally tell you they're not. They're inspired by feudal Japan, but they're not feudal Japanese people. I don't want characters called, you know, Jin, or Yuna, or, you know, and that's not, no. Oathbound is Oathbound. It's not feudal Japan. Just like I don't want, you know, Viking characters called Olaf. Do you know what I mean? Like, because they're not in the setting. The Valkyr are not Vikings. There's something else, you know? That's why we have naming conventions that we bring in later on, so you can make up your own as we go in. But anyway. Yeah, so a distaste for allegory does that. It lays out the tools, and it takes all the pressure off of me. And I say to the reader, no, guys, listen to this bit. I like the analogy of the human body when it comes to setting building. Real history represents the bones and deeper DNA of the setting in question, whilst the writer's history, concepts and inventions make up the sinew, blood, muscle, and finally the heart and mind of the setting. That is literally the message I'm getting across to the reader, so now they know. The onus is taken away from me as the writer. Now they know what I'm writing isn't a straight allegory for historical events, and I can move on. The other thing I do here is grim dark feudalism, where I literally lay out the kind of dark humour that is in Oathbound, and how you should be approaching your sessions in Oathbound. You know, you shouldn't be doing like chandelier and wall climbing D&D hijinks that will get you killed, right? And I even take a joke verbatim from the first Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, The Blade Itself, and it's basically, I'll read it out. This does not mean the world is devoid of levity. Far from it. We just need to treat black comedy and gallows humour as the order of the day. I would like to reference a scene in Joe Abercrombie's quite brilliant First Law trilogy and its first book, The Blade Itself. An inquisitor has come into a room where he sees a grisly scene where his informant has been massacred. Blood is everywhere, and several of his limbs are strewn about the place. He asks, I wonder how this fellow died. To which his lisping, massive henchman replies, poison. I have butchered this joke terribly. Mr. Abercrombie can write with infinitely more panache than I can, but this is generally the kind of humour you should find in Oathbound. It is dark, but generally everybody around the table should at least be able to chuckle at the absurdity of it, right? There you go. A nice example where we lay out the kind of humour you should be seeing in a game of Oathbound, the kind of mood you should be getting yourself into, right? And then finally, to round things out, we have the fundamental law of Oathbound. This is a bit further back, but still. The fundamental law of Oathbound. And this is essentially the law that every character should know. Okay? And we still don't write it in a prose way. We're not getting into prose yet. We're not getting into the full law breakdown. We're just not. What we are doing is showing people, well, I'll tell you, whilst our major law section is later on in this book, it is important to cover certain aspects of the world that every character within it would at least be passingly familiar with. This will not be told in character, but instead will be a rather direct, creator-to-reader section of information about themes and major events that have shaped Grail and the people you will come across when traversing its world. Bang, done, right? And now we have the core concepts of not just things that are going on in the world, but themes. We have certain events here that everybody would know about, right? And certain themes that everybody would know about. But there are more themed things, like Magicka's Fallout. Okay? This is the kind of thing you would find if you're making a video game in a design brief in the studio, right? They will literally write it as in, you know, what's in this world? What is it about? It's not in prose form yet. You're not filling it with flowery language. You're not telling a story. You are telling people verbatim what is in your world and what is going on and what different themes there are in the world, right? And then we get into, obviously, the distaste for allegory, grim dark feudalism, right? A bit further back, we have a note on dark fantasy inclusion and diversity. Now, here's the thing, and you can switch your brain off. If you're not writing a grim dark fantasy or darker game, you know, in set in a world, you can switch your brain off now, okay, for this bit. But this is important to write in your book. With the way the world is going on right now, it is very, very, very important to lay out your stall when it comes to things like this. People are very touchy about inclusion and diversity, right? Well, I have an entire section here where I tell you, look, there are cultures in this world where you can make whatever you want. You can be black, you can be white, you can be Asian, you can be whatever. It doesn't matter. If there is a race in the real world, it is from somewhere in Grail. You are represented in Grail somewhere. The restriction is, you can't really be somebody as, you know, you can't really be black and from one area, and you can't really be white and be from another area, right? So basically, in this world, if you're white and you say you're from sub-Saharan Africa, no. That's silly, and it won't fly in this world. If you're black and you say you're from Scandinavia, no. That's silly, it won't fly in this world. Because if it did happen, it was exceedingly rare, and that's not you. You are playing nobodies. That's who you are in this world, at least at the start. That is who you are. You do not really stand out. I lay this out nice and clear. I say, look, I made these cultures in my world with the expectation that you would use them. So if you're somebody who is black, you can go into this world and go, where are black people in this world? Oh, that's cool. They're from here. That's a cool. I like that. I like that. I'm going to be from here, right? That's why I wrote it that way. So you can do that. If you're from northern Scandinavia, you can read this world and go, where am I from? Oh, hey, people who look like me are from this area. Wow, that's cool. Let me be a character from that area, right? And if you want to be from another area that doesn't look like you, then maybe play somebody outside your comfort zone. I know tons of people who play characters like that, right? Absolutely. I know tons of people who play characters who are, you know, not their own race or not their own gender. That's fine. That's fine. All good. But the world has strictures and rules of where certain people, certain cultures can be from. This is not a Dungeons and Dragons setting where you can be all of the colours of the rainbow wherever you are in the world at any one time, right? That's not how it works. Also, gender. Alright. We get into gender here. This is a dark, medieval fantasy world. If you are a woman walking around with a sword on your back, the world will challenge you. Absolutely. It will stand in your way and go, you shouldn't have that sword on your back. Give it to me now, please, and get back in the kitchen. Right? However, as a female character, you should be able to say, no, go fuck yourself. I'll fight you. And then you fight them and you probably win, right? And you prove to the people around you, you can fight. You will have a lot more opportunities to roleplay as a female warrior than you would do as a man. Because as a man, you're par of the course, right? Everyone expects you to be a warrior or somebody of that ilk. But if you're a woman walking around, you're going to get glances. You're going to get stared at. That's natural in a world like this. Lay out your stall. You're doing your reader a disservice if you start hitting them with vagueness. Do not be vague. Be black and white on the strictures and restrictions that are in your world. Because a world without rules is carnage. It's the very reason why I'm not really big on settings like the Forgotten Realms or Divinity Original Sin. It has no internal rules. It doesn't take itself seriously, so why should I? I have provided the tools in this game for you to be whatever race or people that you want. If you do that, though, you must be from certain areas. It's built into the game. You know? We then have positive gatekeeping and session 0. Alright? So this is talking about, you know, you are allowed to be offended by what goes on in this game. Yes, you are. You are not allowed to ruin everybody else's good time by being so. If this game is not for you, feel free to put it down and go away and do something else. If you are a game master in this game and somebody isn't having a good time, feel empowered to say, listen, dude, this doesn't look like it's for you. Maybe sit this one out and we'll catch you next time. No problem at all, right? It's not for everybody, and it's not supposed to be for everybody. Because I'm telling you now, if you write a role-playing game and you try to make it for everybody, do you know you write it for? Nobody. Stick to your vision. Be happy with what you've done. Have a clear goal in mind and stick to it. Don't deviate. Don't apologise for the things you like and the game you want to write. Don't do that. Instead, put something like this in your game, where you tell people, this is the game. It is all up front in the introduction. The introduction shows you the kind of game we're playing. It shows you the kind of strictures you're going to have, and it shows you the tone of which this game will be played in. If that's not for you, I wish you all the best, and I hope you like one of my games later on in the future. But it's okay if you're not in the mood for it, if it's not for you. But I'm not going to apologise for writing the game in the way that I want to write it. Stick to your guns. Have a disdain for your audience. I'm serious. Be Tolkien. Tolkien didn't write Lord of the Rings for you. He wrote it for himself. He wrote it for his kids. He wrote it because he wanted to write the book that he wanted to read, because it wasn't out there right now. If you're writing an RPG, which is a massive undertaking, you should be writing something that you want to play. That's what you should be doing. And don't apologise for that. And then, of course, we have a note on role-playing, which is basically where I talk about the kind of people are going to enjoy the game, right? If you role-play like this, you're going to get more out of the game, essentially. That's where we are. That is where we are. So that is it. That is the introduction. So we have a literal black and white, what the game is, what the game looks like, what the themes are, what the inspirations are, what a session will look like, all up front. All nice and up front. Slowly expanding outwards from our central premise of Welcome to Oathbound, and we slowly examine each of these paragraphs in our introduction, and we expand on them as we suck the reader deeper and deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole of what Oathbound is. By the time they've gotten to the end of Touchstones of Oathbound, they are now well into the game. They're like, okay, hit me with some more, please. You know? We then have the fundamental lore of the setting. This is not lore that is given out in a flowery prose kind of way. That comes later, much later. In fact, I've only just started writing that section of the book now, and we are what? Down here, look. It's down there, the lore of Oathbound. This is where we do have our flowery prose and all of those nice things. But look at all this. Right, that's how far forward it is in time. The fundamental lore isn't that. It's literally the core tenets of your world laid out from writer to reader, so they know exactly what they're getting into. We then have more core concepts like, magic as fallout in this world. Dust mages are Grail, which shows that, mages in the setting are kind of drug addicts, things like that, right? The Underrealm, a distaste for allegory, grimdark feudalism, and then the final thing we leave on is the time of the Asunder's return. This is where I lay out, if you're going to be playing the game verbatim from where it is now, this is what the game world looks like when you're about to run your sessions. This is the state of play. And then we're into the rules. We've stopped our introduction. At page 29, we're done. Page 30, we're into the rules. Okay? That's what an introduction does. In the first page or two, a player should be able to pick up your game, say, is this for me or not? And if you back yourself and your vision, a lot of people who've already seen the cover of your book will go, yeah, this is a bit of me. I like this, right? And then you take these 3 paragraphs and you slowly examine them as you go on in your introduction. For the next 10, 15, 20 pages, you slowly examine the kind of game people will be playing. And, by the way, do not think you're boring people by doing an introduction. Most of the role players I know think the introduction to an RPG is the most interesting part. Simply because they're not being hit by all of this lore that they don't know whether they're going to care about it yet. You haven't earned the right to give them lore or rules yet. That's what I'm saying. People's time is precious. Respect it. Let them know up front what they're getting into. That's what I would do, alright? That's how we do an introduction. We line things up straight away, we let them know what's going on, we respect their time, and we're upfront about what the game is in the first 20 pages. And your first 1 or 2 pages should literally be, they should be able to read that first 1 or 2 pages and know, verbatim, whether this is for them or not. And if it is, then the rest of your introduction should be an examination of those 3 paragraphs, where you slowly pull them further and further down the rabbit hole of the kind of game that they're getting into. And by the end of the introduction, they should be chomping at the bit to get into that fundamental law section, to know more about the world, and the rules, and things like that. Your absolutely in-depth law should be right at the back of the book. Not up front. Right at the back. Okay? That is how I do it. And that is how Revenant's been a moderate success, and that's how I hope the massive tome that will be Oathbound when it comes out will also be a success. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. If this helped you, like the video. I love you all a long time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next part. Maybe next week, maybe the week after, where we're going to talk about the main body of your work, how to write lore properly, and maybe how to make people enthused about the rules that you write. All right. I'll see you soon. Have a good one. Bye now.